Yo, what's up guys? Mike Thomas, aka the Young Purrely here, and I am back again today with a very requested video. Actually, I think this is the most requested thing that I do following the last video, which was the third place regional deck profile, and that was to go over my siding patterns for dragons. Now, I will say just just to preface things that I'm sorry guys, we got to restart. I got confused because Varen posted the same like, Varen, you fucked me up, bro. You posted the "that's crazy" 8th time again, I can't, like, sequence of messages. Like, you posted that again, and I saw the screen. I'm like, did the stream crash? And it literally like broke my head. Like, it broke my head. So can you guys just like flood that out? Like, flood that, yeah, ban him. That's actually a good idea. Let me just time him out for a second and just delete those at chat. All right. Let's start again. So say hi to YouTube. I'll count you guys in. So 3. Oh, hold on. Let me drink some water first. Say hi to YouTube. 3, 2, 1. Yo, what's up guys? Mike Thomas, aka the Young Purrely here, and I'm back again today with chat following up the last video that we had on the channel, the last big video, which was the regional deck profile, where we got 3rd place with Dragon Link in my regionals. And I want to follow this up with what I think is the most requested video that I do following that video, which was to go over my siding patterns with the deck. And I think we can go through that. I've kind of figured out what we're gonna side in for all of the matchups that you should really care about, being like Unchained here, like the Mirror Match, Rescue Ace, Infernoble, Purrely branded, Mana Flu Lab. So those are going to be the main ones we're going to cover. I'm not going to cover stuff like Centurion because this deck list was from like the weekend before those cards came out, so I haven't figured out exactly how I want to side for that matchup and whether or not I'm going to make some changes. So just keep that in mind, but we're going to cover pretty much everything else, and you can probably just figure out what changes to make yourself from there because it's going to be pretty comprehensive. That all said, though, remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, etc. On the video. It really does help me out a lot. Also, if you didn't already know, we are now a part of the Top Cut podcast, which is available on Amazon, Spotify, and Apple Music, I think. You can check us out on there. Go check it out. It's a lot of fun. And as well as, not only that, but we have the new Untapped.gg sponsor. If you're not aware of what that is the Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck Tracker. They've been so kind as to sponsor us over on Twitch. You can come join us on Twitch where we play a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. But if you do want a really simple and easy way to support me as a creator, you can download the Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck Tracker for Master Duel completely for free using my link in the description, and that does just help me out a lot. So if you want an easy way to support me, that's a great way to do it, and you get a really cool program to go with it. If you've ever played Hearthstone, these are the same people that made HS Replay and the deck tracker for Hearthstone. So if you're into that kind of thing, go check it out. But without any further ado, let's not waste any more of your time. Let's hop into the video, into the guide, and we can just show you guys my siding patterns. So I've kind of laid out my deck in as best of like a deck profile format as I can, and I think that this is just gonna be the best way to show you guys. So this is like the standard deck without the side deck. I have the side deck here like in my hands, and I guess we can just kind of go through and I'll show you what cards I would pull out. So let's start with like the Unchained matchup, and how I'll do this is I'll just do it when we start for going second. Because when you're going first, you don't really need to side too much against many decks. So against Unchained, I think a lot of your cards are pretty good into the deck naturally. Like all the bestials are really, really strong into them. But like if you think about what like the normal Unchained board is, it is going to be stuff like it's going to be the Soul of Rage, I think, and the Wave Caesar and like a couple trap cards. And they can play through hand traps pretty well, so you can kind of just like take out the hand traps, and that's what we're going to end up doing for a lot of these. So what I think I like to side in that matchup is I like to put in a Druis, and I like to put in stuff like Book of Moon, and I like to put in sometimes like the Pankratops can be kind of good too. So these are all cards that are like pretty decent in that matchup. You can optionally like not put in the Pankratops too if you don't want. But you can just like take out some of the hand traps. So for example, I might just like take out all 3 Veilers, swap those for like the Book of Moons, for example, because they're not that great. And then maybe take out like 1 Imperm, or maybe like 1 Ash or 1 Nib. I do like the Nibs in that matchup a lot, actually. I think the Nibs are really, really solid because you can just wait until right before they're about to finish their turn with the Wave Season and just hit them with Nib. I think I made like both of my Unchained opponents pass on a Nib token and nothing else during the regional, at least one of our 3 games. So this card's really, really good. And like that's why I would like leave in the extra like maybe 1 or 2 Imperms if you can, because this is just like an easy 4-card swap. Because if you draw Nib plus Imperm, you know, you Nib them, you erase most of their board, and you just have to care about the back row. Usually they get half of their back. Usually they pop most of their back row and they get it back from the, I think it's Sarama, the level 4 Dark that resets one. So if I have them, I'll just like hold Imperm for that and just be like, okay, I'll Imperm the Sarama. Okay, you get 2 level 6s on the field. I'm going to Nib you. If I have a Bestial, I'll hit your Yama out of grave. And it's like, okay, your board's broken. You have nothing. So I think that's a pretty simple side pattern. If you want more or less respect, you know, you can put in stuff like tactics if you really want to. Like you can put in the tactics, you can put in the Pankratops. And this is something that you're going to see me do a lot is when I go second, I usually take out the black metals and the red MD and like a lot of matchups. So if you're really afraid, you can do that. Like, or maybe if you don't want to take out the hand traps and maybe you think they're really good, you can just swap these for instead. And for the most part, that's pretty much all you need to do for that matchup. And then when you go first, you don't really need to side too much. Usually when I go first, I put in the tactics. When I go first, I never touch these cards, so that's why it's important that we focus on the defensive cards we can switch around. So again, you know, these aren't very good, so you can just take these out, and then you can put in the 3 tactics. If you want the extra Druis Worm in that matchup for like maybe the grind game, then you can just take out one of the Imperms, swap that back in. Similarly, you could do that with Ash Blossom if you want the Imperm instead, or if you want Veiler, something like that. But yeah, just for when I go first, it's usually just the tactics. If you really want to, you can put in the Book of Moons as well. Like when you go first into that matchup, just so that you can like prevent them from linking off, maybe make it a little bit more awkward for them. But because it's so easy for them to pop their cards, I don't think you need to do that necessarily. And then just to comment on it, I don't put in the Lightning Storms and Duster in that matchup just because it gives them advantage, and I don't think it helps too much. If you really are really scared and maybe you aren't playing as many Bestials, you could put in the Lightning Storms to just try and hit their Link monsters. I mean, you could do that. But it's up to you. So that is Unchained. So that's the first on our list. Now for Tear is going to be kind of similar. So again, I'm going to talk about what I do when I go second. For Tearlament, I do like having all of the hand traps and the Bestials. So for Tear, when I go second, I like to put in the Droll and Lockbirds because that can really shut them down, as well as the Druis, and I usually just take out these 4. If you want more than that, you can maybe put in like 2 tactics if you really, really think you need tactics, and you can like pick stuff to cut. Like you could cut Beast because it's not super good against them, and you could cut like 1 Lubellion maybe if you know, really, really want to squeeze the tactics in there. But honestly, I think just the 3 Drolls and the Druis over these 4 are probably just the best. So like it would just look like that. It'd be the same deck list. But for when you go first, I think when you go first, the deck is pretty much perfect. And I would just put in Druis Worm and 3 tactics because they are going to put in hand traps for you. So this is something that I do a lot is, you know, if I have hand traps for a specific matchup, I usually only put them in going second. Like when I go first, I don't usually like to touch my deck too much because I think it's pretty fine going first, unless the hand trap is like a super, super blowout. And I don't think Droll's a huge blowout against Tear. I just think it's inconvenient for them to deal with when they go first. So I think you can just put in these 4, and what I would probably do is I would just side down on like your, your Veilers and your Imperms, because Ash is really good against them, and I think the Bestial Druid Worm is probably a little bit better. If you want the idea of like you want to hold your hand traps in your hand when you go first, you could do this instead as well. Just take out the Imperms and leave the Veilers. Usually I like to keep the Imperms when I go first, just because I can set it. But I do recognize that like sometimes you're going to draw into Veiler off of the Regained. So, you can pick and choose between those two for personal preference. But for going first, it's just putting in the tactics in the Druid Worm against Tear and just taking out some of the defensive cards. For the mirror match, you're going to treat kind of like Tear a little bit. But it kind of depends on how they play. If game 1 you see them make kind of like a weaker board, like maybe their board is just like Seals Savage, pass, or like maybe they don't play Beast, then you can really easily just get away with something like simple, just like Pankratops 3 Droll. Like just do these and just cut these 4 and you'd be fine in the mirror. But if you see them going like really crazy with like full combo and like they're putting their Boral Savage on, or like their Boral End on the field, like say they end on like Boral End plus Savage, which is something a lot of Dragonlink players do. If you see them do that, I wouldn't put in the Pankratops, because Pankratops is only really good into Seals End boards. And then instead I would put in the triple tactics going second, take out these 4 again, and then just cut 1 Veiler, 1 Imperm. That's just what I would do. Alternatively, you could keep the 3 Imperms, cut 1 Veiler, and then cut 1 Ash as well, because Ash isn't fantastic in the mirror. But you can make that decision based on how they play in game 1. Keep in mind though that like Dragons is a deck that doesn't always end on a consistent end board, so there's that. The other thing that you can do too is like, you notice that I didn't say put in the Druid Worm. And like you can put in the Druid Worm if you want. Like you could go up to 3 Druid Worm and I just cut like a Saronir. But like you can also cut the Bestials as well if you really want to. Because I don't think the Bestials are that great in the mirror match. Which is weird because a lot of people think Bestials are crazy in the mirror. I don't think they're that good. The only reason I wouldn't cut them going second is just because we're cutting the extra normal summon package, and I just wanted more engine. But if, for example, say you don't want to cut like the Veiler and Imperm, you could easily take out a Saronir and a Lubellion when you go second, very easily. And like if you want the Druid Worm because it does force out something like a Savage, you could just swap Lubellion because they might have Droll post side. So those are all like considerations for you in the mirror. The mirror is probably the most complicated side pattern where you have to make decisions based on how they play. Rescue Ace is pretty straightforward, I would say. Rescue Ace I would treat just kind of like a standard back row deck. And you can just very easily just put in your Lightning Storms, Harpies, and Pankratops just as a little 4-card package. And again, we're just going to do the same thing we've been doing a lot, just swap straight over the black metals and the red MD when we go second. So that's pretty straightforward. If you don't want to do that, maybe you can like take out, like sometimes I'll do this, it's not always consistent how I side. Like sometimes I'll make decisions just, if I'm like feeling, ooh, I really don't feel like I'm going to draw well this game. Like I bricked the last game. Let me, like I want to feel like I'm going to open something. Sometimes I'll take out like 1 Saronir, 1 Saronir, 1 Lubellion in matchups where they don't matter as much. And I think you can do that in this matchup. I think one of the alternative siding patterns you could do if you really want to keep your extra normal summons is you can take out in this matchup 2 Saronir, 1 Druid. So it would be, let's see, we'd take these 3 and 1 of the Lubellions. You can take out these 4 as well because they don't have any lighter darks really. So you can take these 4 out for the same 4 here. And then if you want extra cards, like because sometimes I feel like Droll is really good against them. Some days I feel like Droll is good into Rescue Ace. Sometimes I feel like it's not. and I haven't really made up my mind on how I feel about it. But if you want to put the drolls in, you can like take out parts of this package. Like you could take out 2 black metals for 2 drolls, or like 2 black metals and a Veiler on top of these 4, and put in like 3 drolls, for example. So that really comes up to how you feel droll performs in that matchup. So that's up to you. But just like, again, so that you know, like as you're watching this by this point, I've shown you guys this quite a bit, is that a lot of the side outs for like when I'm going second, it's usually either these 4, a nice 4 card package, or some combination of like the 4 bestials being like the 4 extra bestials, because I think 2 Lubellion, 1 Druis, 1 Sarnier, and 1 Magma is like the minimum ratio you can play. And like coincidentally, the extra number of bestials that we play over what the bare minimum is the same number of cards that we're siding in and out. So this is another convenient swap out package when you don't feel like these cards perform very well in a specific matchup. So that's something that you can keep track of, and something that like when you're building decks and like doing siding patterns and stuff is just recognizing like how many cards you can safely swap in and out of your main board. And you'll see like I'm never touching these cards down here. Like I'm never touching the Seyferts really. I'm never touching the babies and like Levianeer. I'm rarely ever touching Nib and Ash. We're never touching the Rockets. So we're just kind of picking the cards that like perform like better or worse in specific matchups, and finding a specific number and like looking for specific numbers of side in and outs. So for this list, it's usually in groups of 4 and 6, because if we're doing 4, we have really easy side outs in the 3 black metal red MD or the 4 extra bestials. And then if we're doing 6, you know, then you can still do that pattern and just take out like 1 and 1 of a defensive card that you don't feel is like, that maybe you feel is impactful, but not impactful enough to like get up to that 6. So that's just kind of a general thing. So again, Rescue Ace when we go first, just to point this out though, because some people don't know this. You should never be putting these cards in your deck if you're going first. So like, even though it's a back row deck, I'm never putting in Harpies, I'm never putting in Lightning Storm, I'm never putting these cards in. So when I go first, I'm still just gonna put in stuff like 3 triple tactics talent, and you know, maybe I'll put in a Book of Moon or something, you know, if I want to hit their fire hydrant. What's it called? Is it just hydrant? Is that the name of it? And just take out the bestials. So what I would probably do is take out like for going first into Rescue Ace, it'd be like 2 Sarnier Druis Worm, and then just for 3 tactics, because we want to keep our normal summons in the deck. All the hand traps that we play are already good, and these cards just don't really do anything, so they can just come out for tactics, so that if we get hand trapped, we can just look at their hand, make their day a little bit worse. So that is Rescue Ace. Now for kind of the big one is Infernoble. This was the matchup I was really the most afraid of when I was building this deck list. And so what I think you do in that matchup is you definitely put in your Droll and Lockbirds, because you just have to say better have it on the Neospace connector. You put in your Pankratops, and then you can optionally put in Lightning Storm. I don't think it's very strong into them, but I think it's these 4. And then you just take out the Bestials, you take out the 2 Sarnier, the Druis Worm, and a Lubellion for these 4. And you just pray that it's enough. And you just kind of have to hope that that's good enough. Alternatively, if, you know, I built the deck list differently, maybe these would have been Lancias in that matchup, and maybe that could have done something. So like, if say you are playing the Lancias and you have like 5 cards to put in, it would still be the same 4 as before, and then like 1 of the black metals, for example. So that's kind of how you can get your flexibility, is you just look for those like reoccurring patterns, and if you need to make a slight adjustment to fit in like 1 or 2 cards, you can just do that. So again, this deck is getting like messier and messier as the video goes on. When you go first, I'm not really sure whether or not like I can say this in general. In general, I would say just put in the 3 triple tactics talent, and again take out the Druris Worm and 3 Saronir, and 2 Saronir. So these 3 can come out for the 3 tactics in matchups whenever you go first into matchups where they're not super relevant. Against Infernoble though, I think this is another one of those cases of like you kind of have to like read the room a little bit. So like if game 1, say you win the dice roll and they hand trap you and they're playing Infernoble, you might need to say, okay, we're going to put in the tactics. But if you go first and then they say, I don't know, drop Dark Ruler on you, because Infernoble is a combo deck that plays like 45 cards. So like you never really know whether or not they're going to be on hand traps or if they're going to be on board breakers. So if they're on breakers, instead of the tactics, I would just put in the drolls and just hope the drolls come up. But if they're on hand traps, just put in the talents. So that would be the adjustments I would make for that matchup. Moving down the list, we're going to go to Purrely. Purrely's another really bad matchup for dragons. So Infernoble and Purrely are like the 2 scary matchups for dragons right now. Purrely, you definitely have to put in the Droll and Lockbirds. And you also put in the Book of Moons. These are probably the 2 best cards off the top of my head that you can play for that matchup. And I think the simple thing to do would just be to take out the Nibiru's, because they don't necessarily play into Nib, and if you do Nib them, you're triggering my friend Purrely. It's kind of like nibbing against seals and dragons. And again, you're going to take out the 2 Saronirs and the Druris Worm. This is for when you go second into Purrely. So it would be these 6, the 3 books and the drolls, into the nib for the nibs and the extra bestials, because you're not going to need those against the deck that doesn't play out of its graveyard. And then when you go first into Purrely, I think you can drop the Book of Moons. Now, this is debatable for you. You can potentially leave the books in, but something that you have to remember is that you can, something you have to remember is that Purrely is playing 3 Street right now because of Rescue Ace. So Book isn't as good when you go first into Purrely as you might hope. So a lot of times I think it's just the drolls for the nibs. But if you want, you can just put these in going first as well for the 3 bestials, or you can put in the tactics. I think the tactics would be better over the books when you go first. So I think against Purrely, it's going to be the same 6 that you're taking out. So it's going to be the 3 nibs out and the 3 bestials out for when you go first as well. And then you could just keep the Book of Moons in when you go first, but personally I think the tactics are better when you go first. So it would be tactics and droll for me over those 6. So let's put those back. Why Book of Moon? Oh, hold on. Let me look at chat real quick. The chat is asking why Book of Moon against Purrely. I guess I can explain that real quick. So the reason you play Book of Moon against Purrely as well is when they go first, they're going to end on a Little Nor plus the Yeep, and their goal is to activate the trap card per leap into making their big Nor, right? But if you Book of Moon target their target in response, they're not going to be able to resolve their Xyz summon because their target's going to go face down. So this can prevent them from getting the Nor on the field because they do only have 1 Delicious. So it's very rare that they hard make Nor on their first turn. So that's why it's really good going second. Going first, the reason for playing Book of Moon would be just to try and hit them when they try to rank up. Like they might go, Black Cat, target something in the grave to rank up, and then you just go Book of Moon, target it, put it face down, it can't rank up anymore. But that's the reason why that tactics is probably preferred is, again, they play 3 Street now, so it's very unlikely you'll be able to target their monsters. Book versus Spellbound. I don't think Spellbound is very good, Benjamin Bully. I don't think that card's super, super good. Yeah, because it only affects what's currently on their board, and also Book is just widely better into a lot of matchups. So moving on to Branded Chimera. This one's pretty straightforward. You can put in the Droll and Lockbirds over the Nibs. I think that's a pretty easy place to start from when you go second, because they're probably not going to play into Nib. You can also debatably put in the Druris Worm. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think you need to put it in. But I think really all you have to do is put in the trolls going second against them, because I think our deck already kind of farms them, if I'm being perfectly honest. If you want more hate for them, though, you can put in stuff like the Lightning Storms and Harpies just to try and turn off their back row. And, you know, you could also put in the Pankratops if you wanted, and then you would just swap out either the black metals or some of your extra bestials. I think that, like, if I was going to put in 2 Lightning Storm and a Harpy, I would probably take out one of the Saronniers, one of the Druis Worms, and one of the black metals for these 3. If you were going to put these in, and then if you wanted the Pankratops, you could take out a second black metal as well. But the bestials are also still really good, so I don't always do that. A lot of times it's just the 3 droll for the 3 nib. And I think when you go first, it's the 3 Nibiru come out and the 3 tactics go in, and I don't think you need to make other changes when you go first. I think when you go first, that's just good enough. If you don't love the bestials, you can take them out again. You can take out, what I would do is I would take out 1 Druis, 1 Saronnier, 1 Druis, 1 Saronnier, 1 Lubellion for the 3 drolls, and just put the 3 drolls in. And that's just only if you don't think the bestials are very good into the matchup. And I'm kind of on the fence about it. It can be good, it can be bad. I think they're better going second than going first, though. So I think if you like the drolls into that matchup, swapping the bestials is a consideration. But something you do have to keep in mind is bestials are engine for you. So a lot of times I just leave them in just so I can, you know, play the game. Let's see. Then the next deck I have listed is Mannadium. I think for Mannadium, this is another one of those scary matchups. I think we do leave in the bestials. I think you actually side in your extra bestial, your Druis Worm, for them, because like Tear and Unchained, the bestials can go really hard against them, especially Druis Worm. I think you can also play Pankratops in that matchup, just because their board, you know, a lot of times just has guys on it, and you can just beat through it that way. And for this, I think this is just really easy. You can just take out the black metals and the red MD, so these 4 come out again. Take out the extra normal summons for these 4. And then if you do want to put in that Pankratops, I would probably just take out one of the Saronniers or something for the Pankratops, or the Branded Beast. I think Branded Beast is really good going second, but in like heavy combo matchups, sometimes I'll just take it out for something like Pankratops that can come on the field and just trade a negate immediately. But again, Pankratops is like, it's only okay into that matchup just because like you might be putting a bestial on the field. So that's why it's a debatable like include. And then when you go first against Mannadium, this one, it's kind of interesting because like all of your cards are good against them, and you're going to want to put in the tactics. So the tactics definitely come in against them. But I think you can also just put in you definitely put these in, but you have to put the drolls in as well. So what I think you can do when you go first against Mannadium is you can just side down a copy of your Imperm, a copy of Effect Veiler, and a copy of, I would say, probably Druis Worm when you go first. So these 3 can come out when you go first. And then this is where it gets a little bit hard because you have to... so like we now have the drolls on our list, right? But you also have to try and fit the tactics in. So I think, again, you can just side down on one of their hand traps and just take out, like, I don't know, maybe your Imperms and maybe an Ash Blossom, you know. Just because you want to have hand traps that are strong, you know, and you want to have a diversity, but you still want to have these cards in your deck. But this is, again, one of those matchups that, because it's a heavy combo deck, if you don't see hand traps in their deck list and they're playing stuff like Enemy Controller, they're playing stuff like Super Poly or Dark Ruler or Droplet, you can just ignore the tactics and just make it real simple. So these 3 come out for sure, the Imperm, the Veiler, and the Druis. Those go in for the drolls, and then debatably you can put in any number of tactics depending on how many hand traps you've seen throughout the match so far. So that's for when you go first into Mannadium. Then this is one that my chat asked me to include. I don't really consider this a deck that you should like respect during siding, but I do get asked about it a lot, so I'll mention it. And that deck is Floowandereeze. I think Dragons actually has a really easy time into Flu, personally, but for that, you're going to put in the Drolls and you're going to take out the Nibs immediately because they're not playing into Nib. This is for going second again. You're going to put in the Droll and Lockbirds, and then you can put in the Book of Moons as well as 2 Lightning Storm. And the reason why I say Lightning Storm and not the Harpies is because the Lightning Storm can flexibly let you hit back row or the monsters. So if they only set like 1 card and it's the, just the trap card, you just say, okay, that's fine. I'm going to play Lightning Storm and call monster and hit their face up Empen. And now they either have to, they can't use their trap card to set up Apex Avion. They have to reestablish an Empen if they want to use that at all. And then the Drolls obviously just auto win against them. The Book of Moons, and like this is something I was asked about on Twitter, is why would you put in Book of Moon for Flu, or like why wouldn't you play Spellbound? And to go back to chat, part of the reason is that Book of Moon also covers Flu very well because their end board is going to have a Empen on it, and then you just Book of Moon the Empen, and then the Empen it just doesn't do anything, and you don't care anymore. So Book is really good into them. So obviously you're going to take out the Nibs, and then this is one of those matchups again where you can just side down on the Bestials. You can actually take out Druisworm completely. And how many cards did I side in and out? I said 8. So you can take out, I would maybe leave in like 2 Sarnier. You can take out 1 Lubellion. So what is this, 7? And then you can take out like a Black Metal, for example. And then that's just 8 easy side in and outs. It's a really easy siding pattern actually. Because you don't need Druisworm ever because they never special summon and they don't have a graveyard anyway. And then, you don't need Lubellion. You don't want to play into like Droll or Shifter or something. And then you don't need the Nibs. And then again, you were just putting in these 8. You were putting in Drolls, Books, and Lightning Storms. So that was Flu. When you go second, when you go first, it would just again be Droll and Tactics. And again, you're just taking out the Nibs, you're going to take out the Druisworms, and you take out like a Sarnier, for example. And then that's pretty just straightforward. You could also just take out a Lubellion if you wanted, like maybe if you're afraid of Droll. You could take out Lubellion over Sarnier, but it doesn't really matter at that point. And that would just be for going first. So that would be Tactics and Droll. And then if you really, again, if you think that they're not on hand traps, because Flu isn't always on hand traps, you don't have to put into Tactics. You could just leave the extra Bestials in your deck just as like extenders. And then getting down to the bottom of the list is our Labyrinth and back row matchups, just like back row in general. And this just kind of covers your rogue deck stuff. That's just your Lightning Storms and your Harpies and Pankratops. So this is going to be kind of a similar siding pattern to Rescue Ace. It's just that instead of taking out the Black Metals and Red MD every time, you just debate, okay, well, do they have Lights and Darks in their decks? If yes, keep in the Bestials. If no, like you can just side down these 3 Bestials, or like these 4 Bestials, right? You can just take out 2 Sarnier, a Lubellion, and a Druis, or you can take out like 1 Black Metal, 1 Sarnier, Lubellion, and Druis. And then you just put in these 4 cards, and you just say, okay, this is my back row respect, and there's that. Alternatively, like you can always make adjustment. This is why I saved this for last. Is you can always make just adjustments for the matchup. Depending on like what kind of a rogue deck it is. So like if they summon Inspector Border or something, maybe you put in the Book of Moons, right? And then you can just pick from here. It's like, all right, well, we take these out. Like if it's like hard back row, obviously the Nibs can come out instead of like the Bestials, for example. And yeah, like I think when you go first though into like hard back row, like let's call it like, I don't know, Chain Burn, right? Like just a deck that plays no hand traps and just sets cards. Like you can just take out the Nibs and put in like Harpies and like maybe 2 Books or something like that. And why would it be Harpies and 2 Books? Like, so this is like the weird exception to the rule when you put in Harpies going first, is like when you have a card that is so unbelievably dead against whatever you're playing. Like, you're playing against literally like 2008 like Burn or something like that, where they just set 5 and pass no matter what. So the Harpies, obviously, like, you have nothing better to put in. You're not going to put in Lightning Storm because you're going to have a board. The Book of Moons are kind of nice, though, into some of those hard back row decks, because, like, say they set an Imperm or something, and, like, say you go first, make a Seals or whatever, and then on your turn, like on turn 3, you're starting to push them, and they, I don't know, maybe they Imperm your guy. You can just chain Book to, like, force it through. So that's just, like, marginally better than a Nib. So that's the only reason I'd do something like that. But then if it's specifically Labyrinth, I guess the only difference is that, like, I guess you'd also put in a Bestial, like, when you go second. Like, you'd put in a Bestial. You might put in the Talents as well. But this is just, like, specifically for, like, something like Lab, is you might add an extra card into the siding pattern. Like, you'd take out the Nibs, and then maybe you take out, like, a black metal or something, just because the Bestials are good into Labyrinth. So yeah, I think that's pretty comprehensive. I know that this is probably a pretty repetitive video at this point. I think you guys have probably got the idea by now of, like, what to do. And I think that's what makes side patterns really fun. And, like, what makes lists a solid is when you have, I'm just going to pick up my cards while I'm, like, saying all this, is when you're able to just find a repeating pattern and just stick to it, where it almost doesn't even matter what you're playing against. Almost every deck is going to follow a very similar pattern. And you can just go through and say, okay, these are cards that come out, these are cards that go in, and just stick to that pattern and just kind of loop it. And that's when you know that you have you know, a solid little siding pattern, because it's very routine, very flexible, and just you know, it kind of just covers all the options. So that's kind of how I side with this deck. I'm not sure how we would side for Centurion. I haven't really looked at that yet. But maybe in a future video coming out soon. The one thing I will note too is that for time in the round for Scarlet, because this was in my side deck and I just haven't talked about it, and this is kind of matchup independent. It depends on if you're going first or second. If you're going first and you just, like, I don't know, maybe there's like 2 minutes on the clock when you start your round, and it's like, oh, well, the only way I get out of this is with Scarlet. You can probably just take out your access code, because there probably won't be a turn 2. You know, like, there won't be a turn 3 to get to. But, like, sometimes I'll put in Scarlet into my extra deck if I'm going to game 3 and, like, I'm in a matchup where, like, you know, there might be 15, 20 minutes on the clock, and I'm like, man, this matchup I know takes a really long time to play. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll put the Scarlet in, just if I feel like I'm in one of those matchups, and I'll usually swap, probably not the access code, because, you know, if I'm in one of those matchups, I don't want to end up in a game state where I have to Scarlet burn them, because I can't just access code and kill them. So I probably wouldn't take out access code in that scenario. I'd probably take out something like Chaos Angel, because I think Chaos Angel a lot of the time just promotes very slow gameplay, where you're just sitting on a Chaos Angel like, haha, you can't out this, you don't have an out, this is a big towers. So if I'm in a matchup where it's like, we're going to game 3, I'm going second, and it's like, or maybe even I'm going first, and it's just like, I know that, like, we're gonna get to turn 3 or 4, but I don't know if I'm gonna get to the battle phase of that turn. I might swap the Chaos Angel for, like, a Scarlet, just because the Chaos Angel is better at, like, slower games where I'm just gonna, like, try to pick apart a board or something like that. So I think that these are kind of like your most cuttable cards for Scarlet if you have to, like, pick between them. Yeah, maybe the other one that you could potentially cut is Baron as well, like, depending on what the matchup is specifically, because this card, you probably shouldn't be going into this very often. Like, really, I only go into this when I'm resolving Magma on my opponent's turn with a Seals, and I have, like, Quick Launch in my hand or something like that. So, like, that way I know I can just, like, search a Druis in the end phase, drop it on them, and then, like, start my turn with, like, Prio Quick Launch into main phase priority make Baron. So, like, if you're making this card when you go first, you're probably misplaying with this. So, like, you can take this out a lot too. So yeah, I think that's kind of the sighting guide. This has gone on a little bit longer than I expected. So you kind of got like a very in-depth tutorial as to how I guess my brain works and how I side deck. So hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, please let me know. I'm happy to you know, make more of these. Let me know how you felt about the format of this video. If maybe, you know, you think it might be easier to do it with like Dueling Book or something, another format, but you know, I just kind of like playing with the cards too. So just let me know how you thought. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and to check out the Top Cut podcast, and as well go download the Yu-Gi-Oh deck tracker from Master Duel if you have not already done that. Yeah, I hope to see you in the next video, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.